I have just about every iPad Apple sells right now, and they all do different things. I think it's important to know which iPad is best for your specific needs, so we'll start with the cheapest iPad that Apple calls iPad. This is actually the only iPad that Apple sells right now that I don't have. But this is for someone that just wants the cheapest iPad that they can type on or watch movies on. It's not a bad iPad, and it is pretty cheap compared to all the other iPads, but the way the accessories work is just ridiculous. First off is the keyboard that Apple sells. It costs $250, which is pretty crazy since the iPad itself costs $350, so now you're up to $600 for this iPad. Of course, there are off-brand keyboards on Amazon for like 30 bucks, and that's probably what I would do to save a little money since this Apple keyboard just sucks anyways. The other issue is the Apple Pencil. All the other iPads wirelessly charge their Apple Pencils, but this one doesn't have wireless charging, so you actually have to plug it in using a USB-C cable, and it's only compatible with the USB-C Apple Pencil or the original. One other thing to keep in mind with this iPad is it does have the A16 chip, which is about 3 years old, so it won't be able to keep up for quite as long as the other iPads. For example, this iPad doesn't get any Apple Intelligence features, and it's because the chip is just too old and just can't handle it. But don't worry, we'll get more into Apple Intelligence soon. The iPad mini starts at $500, which is a pretty big jump, but it is quite a bit faster with the A17 Pro chip. It has an anti-reflective coating, and it's got Apple Intelligence. Personally, I love my iPad mini. I use it as like a little notebook, and I take it to the gym to write my workouts or just around so I can easily take notes using my Apple Pencil. This could fit into something like a purse or even some of my pant pockets, which is really nice for traveling, especially when you pair it with the Apple Pencil. And I think that this is the best iPad to have an Apple Pencil with. Since this iPad does have the A17 Pro chip, it gets Apple Intelligence, which is Apple's attempt at bringing AI to all their products. As of right now, Apple Intelligence is pretty underwhelming, but Apple does know this, and so they're working really hard to make Apple Intelligence better, so it will be worth having an iPad with Apple Intelligence in the future. Currently, the 3 biggest Apple Intelligence features are writing tools, which you can change your writing into something a little more professional or friendly. You can also summarize or completely write something new from a basic prompt. Genmoji, which lets you create new emojis from pictures of people or crazy descriptions you can think of, pretty much anything you want. And notification summaries, which summarizes your text messages, emails, and other notifications so you can easily figure out what people are saying. The iPad Air is $600, and we're starting to get a little bit pricey, but if you're willing to pay the extra $250 over the cheaper option, it is a little bit nicer and you don't have to deal with the weird things that the regular iPad has. This iPad is also compatible with the Apple Pencil Pro, and just like the iPad mini and iPad Pro, it'll snap to the side of the iPad and start charging your Apple Pencil. It also supports the Magic Keyboard, which magnetically attaches to your iPad and gives you a trackpad and a second USB-C to charge your iPad with. Of course, it does have Apple Intelligence since it has an M series chip, the M3, which is actually the same chip that they put in computers, and it's way overkill for iPads. The iPad Air is a solid iPad and should last you a long time. It is a little bit more pricey than the regular iPad, but it eliminates all those weird things that the regular iPad has. Now for the most overkill iPad ever, the iPad Pro. This is currently the thinnest Apple product that Apple's ever made, and it starts at $1,000, which is pretty pricey, but this thing packs a punch. Apple threw the M4 chip into this iPad, and odds are you'll never use that to its full capacity. It also gets all the Apple Intelligence features, Apple Pencil Pro support, and USB-C 4 for super fast 40GB transfer speeds. This means you can do things like plug in a camera and almost instantly transfer all the data from your camera to your iPad. This is the only iPad with a 4-speaker audio system, which all work together so nicely and make it sound amazing. It's also the only iPad with Face ID, and you can get a nano texture display option, which helps almost completely get rid of reflections. But that's not the biggest thing. That would be the new ProMotion Tandem OLED display. Apple developed a new display for the iPad by stacking 2 OLED panels on top of each other for double the brightness, and this display is truly beautiful. If you just want the cheapest iPad you can find to watch movies on, I think the regular iPad would do just fine. Just don't buy their keyboard case, buy a cheap Amazon case, and it'll work out pretty good, I think. If you're looking for a digital notebook that you can take around easy and write down notes and track your calendars, that would probably be the only reason why I would get the iPad mini. If you're wanting an iPad to completely replace your computer, I would get the iPad Air because although the iPad Pro is a little faster, you'll never be able to use those speeds on an iPad because the software just limits it so much, so just stick with the iPad Air. And if you don't care about price and you want the greatest tablet that money can buy, get the iPad Pro. Honestly, I love my giant iPad Pro. I think it's Apple's best product, but it is pretty pricey and it's not that different from the iPad Air, so honestly, if I was smart, I'd probably get the iPad Air.